Welcome to Life Stories. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness lead to the biggest changes. Jack Daniels was just a hardworking mechanic, struggling to keep his small shop running until a chance encounter with Olivia Carter turned his world upside down. What started as a simple car repair became an opportunity to transform not just his life, but an entire community. But change never comes easy, and Jack soon found himself facing resistance, doubts, and challenges he never expected. Will he rise above it all and build something lasting? Stay tuned to Life Stories and subscribe to the channel to begin today's journey. I was lying under an old, rusted Chevy, the kind of job that made my back ache and my hands perpetually smell like oil. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and metal, a scent that had become as familiar to me as the beat of my own heart. This shop, small, worn down, but mine, was where I spent most of my days, hands deep in engines, trying to keep the ghosts of unpaid bills at bay. The unmistakable sound of a car sputtering to a stop outside made me pause. I slid out from under the Chevy, wiping my hands on my already grease-stained overalls. A sharp, panicked voice followed. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I turned to see her, a woman who did not belong in a place like this. She was young, poised, her heels clicking nervously against the cracked concrete floor. The dim light of the setting sun caught the sheen of her sleek black coupe, which was parked haphazardly at the curb like it had barely made it. "My car broke down," she said, gesturing toward it. Her voice was clipped, hurried, as though she had somewhere far more important to be than here. I studied her for a moment. Everything about her, from the tailored coat to the designer handbag she clutched like a lifeline, screamed money. The kind of money that didn't usually stop in places like my little garage in Detroit. "Looks like you're in the right place," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Pop the hood. Let me take a look." She hesitated, glancing down at her phone like she was debating whether she had time for this. Then, with a resigned sigh, she walked to the car and pulled the latch. I grabbed my tools and leaned over the engine, immediately spotting the issue. The radiator was nearly dry, and a few connections were loose. "You've been driving this with barely any coolant," I said. "That's not good." She bit her lip, clearly out of her depth. "Can you fix it?" "I can," I said, suppressing a grin. "But it might take a couple of hours." She groaned, pacing in those ridiculous heels. "Fine. I'll wait." Her impatience was palpable. But I focused on the work. The sun dipped lower in the sky, shadows stretching across the garage as I lost myself in the familiar rhythm of repairing something broken. By the time I was done, the sky had turned a dusky purple, and she was leaning against the wall, scrolling through her phone. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up. "All done," she exhaled, a mixture of relief and frustration flashing across her face. "Finally. Thank you. How much do I owe you?" I gave her the number, a modest sum, considering the work I'd done. She blinked, then reached into her designer bag and pulled out a thick wad of cash. "Keep the change," she said curtly, handing me far more than I'd asked for. "That's too much." I started to protest, but she was already walking toward her car. "Consider it a tip," she called over her shoulder before slipping into the driver's seat. I watched as she drove off, the roar of the engine fading into the night. A strange encounter, but nothing more, I thought. Until later that evening, when a knock at my door shattered the quiet. I had just cracked open a cold beer, ready to settle in for the game, when I heard it, sharp, firm, deliberate. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with a man in a crisp suit, holding an envelope. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through me. "Mr. Daniels?" he asked. "Yeah," I said warily. "Who's asking?" He extended the envelope toward me. "I'm here on behalf of Miss Olivia Carter." The name didn't immediately register, but then he added, "The woman whose car you fixed earlier today." I frowned. "Is something wrong with the repair?" I told her everything should be running fine now. It's not about the repair, he said. His tone unreadable. Miss Carter would like to thank you personally. She has an unconventional way of doing that. My gut twisted as I took the envelope, my rough fingers brushing against the smooth paper. Something about this didn't feel like a simple thank you. Can I come in? The lawyer asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered with the kind of confidence that suggested he was used to million-dollar boardrooms, not run-down mechanics' houses. His gaze swept over my small living room, the peeling wallpaper, the second-hand furniture, but he didn't comment. Make yourself comfortable, I said, a hint of sarcasm in my voice. He remained standing, merely handing me the envelope. Miss Carter instructed me to deliver this to you personally. She believes in rewarding those who go above and beyond. Cautiously, I opened it. Inside was a check. A check for $50,000. I felt the air leave my lungs as I stared at the number. My hands, so used to handling wrenches and bolts, suddenly felt unsteady. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. This has to be a mistake. No mistake, the lawyer assured me. Miss Carter has her reasons. What reasons? I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. I fixed her car, not her entire life. He smiled faintly. She's a very private person. But let's just say she values acts of kindness, especially from those who expect nothing in return. I stared at the check for what felt like an eternity. 50 grand was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. Let alone held in my hands. It could pay off my debts, fix up the shop, maybe even let me dream a little bigger. But there had to be a catch. What's the condition? I asked, my voice wary. No condition, the lawyer replied smoothly. It's a gift. Pure and simple. I didn't believe him, not entirely. People like Olivia Carter didn't throw around money for no reason. Still, I nodded, slipping the check back into the envelope. If she's looking for more car repairs, she knows where to find me, I said lightly, trying to keep things casual. The lawyer gave a polite nod and turned to leave. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Daniels. And take care. As the door clicked shut, I sat down, the envelope heavy in my hands. I had spent my life scraping by, fixing things that were broken. But for the first time, I had the sinking feeling that I was the one being fixed, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. The check sat on my coffee table for hours, staring back at me like it had a mind of its own. $50,000. I could barely wrap my head around it. It was more money than I had ever held, more than I had ever dared to hope for. And yet, something about it unsettled me. People like Olivia Carter didn't just throw money at mechanics for fixing a radiator. There was something more to this, there had to be. But I told myself I wasn't the type to look a gift horse in the mouth. Maybe this was just my luck finally turning. Maybe, for once, life was giving instead of taking. The next morning, I arrived at the shop early, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my gut. I had barely rolled up the garage door when a black SUV pulled up outside. The door opened, and she stepped out. This time, Olivia Carter didn't look like the frazzled woman from yesterday. She was polished, composed, every inch the CEO I suspected she was. The confidence she radiated was impossible to ignore. Miss Carter, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. Didn't expect to see you again so soon. Call me Olivia, she said with a faint smile. I wanted to thank you in person. I folded my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Didn't your lawyer already take care of that? She laughed softly, shaking her head. I suppose he did. But I believe gratitude is best expressed face to face. There was something in her tone, something that caught me off guard. Sincerity. She stepped closer, her gaze sweeping over the shop. The cracked concrete floor, the rusted toolboxes, the outdated equipment that barely kept up with the jobs I took in. I could see the gears turning in her head, the same way they did when I looked under a car hood. She wasn't just looking, she was assessing. This is your business, she asked. For better or worse? I said. Mostly worse these days. Her expression softened. You're good at what you do. You could charge twice as much. And people would still come to you. Not around here. I replied. People don't have that kind of money. Olivia nodded thoughtfully, then tilted her head. What if I told you I could change that? Not just for you, but for this whole neighborhood. I frowned, pushing off the door frame. What are you talking about? She smiled. Enigmatic. I have a proposal. But it's not the kind of thing we can discuss here. I didn't like the way this was going. Look. If this is about the check. I don't. It's not about the check, she interrupted. It's about potential. Yours. This place is. I think we can build something bigger. Something that actually helps people. But I don't make business deals in grease-stained garages. I hesitated, unsure whether to feel flattered or suspicious. I don't usually mix business with food. Then consider it a favor, she replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. Pick me up at 8. I'll text you the address. And just like that, she was gone again, leaving me staring after her in disbelief. The address Olivia sent me led to a high-end restaurant in the heart of the city. The kind of place where the wine lists were longer than the menus and the servers looked like they judged you before you even sat down. My old truck looked wildly out of place among the sleek black sedans and luxury cars in the lot. And I almost considered turning around. But I wasn't the type to back down. Inside, Olivia was already waiting at a private table, dressed in an elegant navy dress that looked effortlessly expensive. She seemed completely at ease, sipping her wine as if she owned the place. You clean up nicely, she said with a small smirk as I sat down. Thanks. I muttered, feeling like a fish out of water. She didn't waste time on small talk. You're probably wondering why I'm doing all this. The thoughts crossed my mind. I admitted. She leaned forward slightly, her expression turning serious. I grew up in a neighborhood like yours. Not many people know that about me. My father was a mechanic. Like you. He worked hard. Built his business from the ground up. But no matter how skilled he was, he never had the resources to take it further. He could have done more, helped more people, if he just had the right support. I studied her, trying to reconcile the woman sitting in front of me with the story she was telling. And you think handing me a check is paying it forward? She smiled faintly. That was just the beginning. I want to invest in you. In your shop. In your skills. Together. We could build something bigger. Something that helps the entire community. Her words hung in the air between us. Weighty and impossible to ignore. Invest in me? I repeated, as if saying it out loud would somehow make it make sense. Olivia nodded. You have talent, Jack. And more importantly, you have integrity. That's rare. I see potential not just in your work, but in what you could do for the people around you. With the right support, you could turn that small garage into something real. Something lasting. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. Why me? There are better mechanics out there. Bigger shops. She held up a hand, silencing me. I didn't choose you because you're the best mechanic in the world. I chose you because you're the kind of person who fixed a stranger's car without trying to fleece them for every penny. That's the kind of person I want to work with. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to grab the opportunity with both hands. Another part of me wondered if this was some kind of elaborate joke. What's the catch? I asked finally. Her lips curved into a faint smile. No catch. Just hard work and a shared vision. If you're interested, we'll draw up the paperwork and get started. And if I'm not, then you keep the check. No strings attached, she said, leaning back in her chair. But something tells me you won't walk away from this. I didn't walk away. Months passed, and the shop was no longer just a small garage on the edge of Detroit. It had become something more, a place where people came not just to fix their cars, but to build futures. The training program flourished, giving local kids a chance to learn real skills. something they could take with them wherever they went. Families who once struggled to keep their cars running now had a place they could trust. A place that didn't take advantage of their hardship. And through it all, Olivia was there. She wasn't just an investor or some distant benefactor. She was hands-on, determined, and relentless in her vision. It wasn't just about the business, it was about proving that with the right resources, people could change their own lives. Of course, not everyone supported what we were doing. The resentment never fully went away. Some people still whispered, still doubted. But I learned something along the way: real change doesn't happen without resistance. When you try to build something good, something lasting, there will always be those who want to tear it down. But we kept going. We kept proving them wrong. One evening, as Olivia and I locked up the shop, she turned to me with that knowing smile. "You finally see it, don't you?" "See what?" I asked. "That this isn't just about fixing cars," she said. "You're building something that will outlast you." I looked around at the shop, the bright lights, the sound of laughter from the kids in the training program, the hum of an engine being tuned inside. She was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was creating something that mattered. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring videos.